So today we're checking out the DJI Action 5 Pro, which is DJI's newest action camera. Come along with me as I test out the Action 5 through extensive testing, featuring a little hiking trip, some FPV footage, seeing if it's worth it as a vlog camera, and explore all the features it has to offer. Currently raining right now, hence my hoodie. But before we get started, I just want to mention that this is not sponsored by DJI. This is not affiliated with them at all. I borrowed the camera from my local camera store, Aiden Camera in Toronto. So if you're in Toronto, definitely check them out. They didn't ask me to make a video on it. I just know the people that work there and they let me borrow it. But a little bit about my testing. So for people who buy this camera, they're probably going to be using this as an action camera or a little vlog camera, but they're usually not meant for people who already own like a mirrorless or DSLR camera. So I'm not going to be using this with like all the fancy features like setting the correct shutter speed and using ND filters and shooting in log profiles. I'm going to use this in like the most bare bone way possible. We're shooting in a normal color picture profile and we're just going to be using auto settings. I am hooked up to the DJI Mic 2s here, which is one of the really great things about this camera is that they all work in the DJI ecosystem. So even though I'm just going to be using like very basic settings and stuff, I still want to get good audio, which is why I connected these mics. So again, for most of these clips, I'm just going to be doing normal picture profile and auto settings. But whenever I do change it, I'll be putting up the settings on the right side of the screen just so that you know that I changed it. What's going on?
Whoa.
We're heading to the Nikon event today. There's a little...
We're heading? We're just dropping by
here.
As if we...
Okay, we're dropping by. I don't know, maybe there's something cool. So we're testing out the Action 5 Pro today.
Yes.
With the internal audio.
Can I see how close I can get?
Yo, it's like a nice little vlog setup here. Nice and tiny.
Bro, look at the tweet. What the heck?
And TDC, right?
Yeah.
TDC's down here.
Oh, right there.
Oh, wait, that's it?
Yep.
I thought it was like a huge like store or something.
It looked like it.
Yo, this tiny little thing right here
Are we
is
about
where
to be
we're going.
disappointed?
Yo, I'm already disappointed. I looked at it for like a second.
It looks way bigger than that.
I thought it was legit like they rented it out of the store or something.
This is the only place that they have space like this.
At the Nikon pop-up event in Toronto, because I just picked up the Action 5 from Aiden camera earlier in the day, which I didn't expect to get, I didn't have a micro SD card for it. But one of the great things about the Action 5 is that it actually has internal storage. It's only 47 gigabytes, so it's not like it's going to replace having an SD card at all, but for situations like this when you don't have an SD card but you still want to record something and pinch, it's definitely super handy to have. So a couple little things I forgot to say after the Nikon event just because we were wrapping up and we're checking out different stores and I forgot to give my thoughts on it, is that this is a pretty decent vlog setup. The camera's nice and small obviously, so I was just holding it with my hand when we were walking around the mall and nobody really looked at us, which is super nice. Again, being able to connect the DJI Mic 2s to the camera and just having it work seamlessly is very nice to have. Another thing I like is that there's a lot of different ways to mount it. So the Action 5 comes with a magnetic mount so that you can easily put on and remove the camera. It does work with like the GoPro clips, so that's also what I have right now, and it's attached to an Arca plate. And then the Arca plate, since that's what I use a lot for my cameras, I can attach it to different things like my vlog tripod or mount it on a car suction cup. And that just allows me to put the camera in a lot of unique places just because it's very small and there's a lot of different ways to mount it and it gives me a lot of flexibility. But one of the best things about this camera is that it has an insane battery life. So DJI rates this camera for 4 hours of battery life usage, and I don't actually know how they do that, which is insane because the battery of the DJI is actually not that big. I believe it's only 1950 milliamps. So they must be doing some crazy tech behind the scenes to make that 4-hour battery life work. But that's kind of what you want for a vlog camera, which is really nice because one of the worst things is using one whole battery just to get to a location, using a couple batteries when you're actually at the location, using a couple batteries on the way back. And that just means that you have to end up bringing a lot of batteries with you, which is super annoying. But having a really long battery life just means that you can take one, maybe at most 2 batteries, or if you even want to just charge it in between using one battery, it's just really handy. And it's not like the batteries are super heavy, it's just that I don't have to worry about bringing a bunch of batteries or remembering to charge them all before a little vlog session. So speaking of battery life, I want to do a little test to see how much battery I would actually get opposed to their advertised 4-hour battery life. So I started out shooting at 4K 130 and I ended up getting 139 minutes of recording time, before the battery drained to 0. This was a little bit lower than expected, but I wanted to see if I would get a little bit better battery life shooting at a lower resolution. So I charged the Action 5 from 0 to 100%, which only took 40 minutes, which actually surprised me. It only took like 15 minutes to get to 50%, which is insane. And then at a resolution of 1080 30p, I got a battery life of 157 minutes. That's almost 3 hours of recording time, which is really good, but it's still lower than what it was advertised, until I realized that the normal battery that comes with the Action 5 is 1950 milliamps, and I actually got a 1771 from Aiden camera, which means that I actually took one of the batteries from the DJI Action 4. So you are losing about 200 milliamps of battery there. So take my test with a grain of salt. You should be expecting probably about 15 to 30 minutes of better battery life. So the Action 5 has two OLED screens. There's one on the front and one on the back, and they go up to 1000 nits. So even when I was using it during sunny days, I never really had problems seeing what the screen showed, because the screen did get super bright, which is really nice. But one of the things they added with the Action 5 is that it has dual touch screens. So now, even though you have the normal touch screen on the back that you can use to control all of your settings, I can now touch on the front, which is how I can control things like digital zoom, or I can choose like different record modes or different record settings, which is super cool. And then obviously the front screen is super useful for vlogging like this, where I can just see myself. Hello, my hair is so messy. So with the Action 5, while it's recording, if you swipe down the screen, you can change how long it waits until the screen goes to sleep. So 3 seconds, and then it still shows you record time and all your settings, which is pretty cool, but it doesn't waste more battery. And you still get your front screen, I think. Oh no, you don't. You don't get your front screen. And along with the 47GB recording that they have internally, the internal mics on this Action 5 is actually pretty good. That's what you're actually hearing right now, just because I turned off my mic so you can hear it. It's surprisingly good if you're close enough for it to pick up your voice. Obviously, if there's a lot of noise around, it won't be able to isolate everything, but it actually surprised me. Look at the sky.
I'm getting this ready for you.
The next day I headed downtown with Jaden just to shoot some content, and I brought along the Action 5 with me just to do a little vlogging and just play around with the camera a little bit more. We ended up setting down the camera just for some B-roll shots. Speaking of the footage, the DJI Action 5 has a 1/1.3 inch sensor, which isn't the biggest sensor, but for an action camera, it's definitely more than enough. And for 4K 120, it does look pretty good. It doesn't look like there's any artifacting or drops in resolution, which is nice to see.
But right now, we got some bubble tea, and it will be delicious, and I am very happy. Thank you.
Damn, that looks good.
Yum, 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 yum.
Are you getting or no? Come on.
I ordered. Thank you.
Oh, you ordered?
Yeah, I ordered.
What the heck? Want to say hi to John?
Yeah, let me drop that.
Well, actually, I used to get that one all the time. I thought you were asking us for a second.
We also dropped by Aiden Camera just to see my friend, and again, thank you Aiden Camera for lending me the DJI Action 5. Next, we headed to Algonquin, which is one of the national parks in the area, and I decided to mount the Action 5 on my car with a suction mount. It's really nice that the Action 5 is really light, so I had no issues mounting it on the car and I didn't have to worry about it falling off because it was so light. I'm pretty surprised by the dynamic range of this camera. Again, this was just a 10-bit normal picture profile, so I'm very surprised at what the Action 5 is capturing. And I also decided to test out the time-lapse mode, which looks pretty good. I didn't think there's anything special about it, it just kind of looks like a regular time-lapse, but you do have a lot of settings to change how long you want the time-lapse to be.
charging outside of a Canadian Tire right here.
We're looking for a
A
washroom.
lot of noise.
Me and the boys are gonna.
Why is
for a
it like
bathroom.
like I thought it was supposed to be quiet?
Because it's super charging, okay? Understand?
We're currently just waiting for the Tesla to finish charging. Charging is done. We currently have 2 hours and 15 minutes left until we get to our destination. We're doing a quick little pit stop. Found a nice little like lake waterfall thing. Gonna grab some cameras. Let's see, what cameras to grab? Fuji X100F, Praktica MTL30.
Carrying like 3 cameras.
What the hell?
Damn.
We just made it to the spot.
Once we got to the top, we were just hooked in by the view and we kind of just forgot about vlogging. So here's some pictures that we took throughout the day. One of the things I noticed with this camera on auto settings, especially when you have stabilization, which is their rock steady turned on, it does cause a little bit of motion blur, just because in darker situations it's compensating by lowering the shutter speed a little bit too low, so when you're moving around a little bit too much it does cause motion blur. So if you're using auto settings, just something to keep in mind. So it looks like there's a new DJI Action 5 update, and one of the biggest things I'm excited for is added support for adjusting bitrate settings. High bitrate option is available. So I know a lot of people were complaining that the Action 5 was limited in bitrate, so we're going to see if this fixes that. So we just finished updating, and it looks like when you go to settings and you scroll all the way down, there's a new setting that says bitrate, and now I've switched it to high. So we'll see if that makes any difference. So now we're heading up to Scarborough Bluffs. We're going to see if we can catch the sunrise. We're going to be trying to get some drone shots, and we're going to throw the Action 5 on it and see how the quality is. But I believe the bitrate right now after that update should be set to high, so we'll see if the quality is a little bit better. The audio right now that you're hearing is just from the DJI Action 5. I'm not wearing any lav mics, so you can be the judge of how that audio sounds. I'm very curious how this footage looks because right now it is very dark. There's literally only a couple of street lights around. There's nothing really illuminating my face. I can set the screen brightness in my car to high, which is that right now, but that's a little too blinding for me when I'm driving right now, so we'll just keep it on like the lower setting. One thing I really like about this camera so far is that because of this really good battery life, I can just throw it up for things like just talking in the car, or if I want to do a time lapse of me going somewhere, I can just throw it up. I don't really have to worry about the battery life. In the past, when I've had like GoPros and stuff, I'd have to be a bit more wary about how I'm using the battery, just because I know that if I'm going to waste a lot of battery in the car, that I might not have as much battery as I need for stuff like the drone shots that we're trying to get. Currently it says that I'm going to get there at 7:39 a.m. and sunrise is at 7:46ish, so hopefully we still catch a sunset because we did leave a little bit late, so we'll catch you guys soon. So we're back. We're still driving there, but I realized I made a mistake. So after I updated the app and then updated the Action 5, I did set the bitrate to high, but because I usually have a saved preset, on the Super Night mode, it was just set to standard. So now I did change it to high, so right now this is what the quality is with the bitrate high. So maybe we'll see if there's a difference. Back to driving. So on the way to the Bluffs, I decided to test out horizon balance on this camera. And horizon balance can only be accessed if you go to 4K 16:9 and then change the stabilization settings to horizon balance. And horizon balance basically just levels out your horizon, but only up to a 45-degree tilt. So anything under 45 degrees, your horizon just looks completely flat. But once you go past the 45-degree tilt, then it does move. If you're okay with shooting 16:9, this is a great way to get really good stabilization. So when we got to the bluffs, I just went straight into setting up my drone to fly because we were a little bit late and we weren't exactly on time for the sunrise, so I just wanted to get right to it. But basically I want to test out a few settings. So first, these clips are color graded in 10-bit D-Log-M because I want to experience how it grades, and I'm flying in 4x3 because 4x3 gives me the full sensor readout, which is really handy, especially for FPV where I can't always frame it exactly how I want it to, or if I want to use the 4x3 for both YouTube clips horizontally and Instagram or YouTube Shorts vertically, it gives me the full sensor readout so that I can crop it vertically or horizontally. In all of these clips, I was flying 4K 30p, and for these I did use an ND filter and I set my shutter speed to 1/60. In this first clip, I just tested this with the wide field of view with Rocksteady on, and I want to see how well Rocksteady would stabilize. In the second clip, I was still on the wide field of view, but I turned off stabilization. And this is because when you turn off stabilization, the Action 5 still records gyro data so that you can use a program like GyroFlow to calculate the gyro data and get really good stabilization, better than anything that a digital stabilization software can do.
I'm burning bridges with society. Oh, my heart can't be tamed. It keeps.
And then in this third clip, I was still on the wide field of view, but I tried out Rocksteady Plus, which is their kind of like extreme stabilization. And from what I found, Rocksteady has a little bit too much motion blur, and I feel like if you're going to use this setting, you would probably want to bump up your shutter speed a little bit higher.
To the wild I go. Oh, oh. It's time to break free from all that's holding me. I'm letting go of all I'm supposed to be. It's time to give up everything I know. Into the wild, to the wild, to the wild I go. To the wild I go.
So right now the camera is mounted to my one wheel, and we're going to try out the Horizon Steady, the 360 Horizon Steady, and see how well it stabilizes. So Horizon Steady is very similar to Horizon Balance, except that instead of 4K 16:9, you can only shoot it at 2.7K 60:9. But the difference is that instead of it stopping at a 45-degree tilt, Horizon Steady gives you the full 360 tilt, which means that no matter how you turn your camera, the camera will still stabilize and level out the horizon. Hopefully this does not fall off. Looking at this footage, the stabilization looks really awesome. Horizon Steady being able to level out the horizon is such a cool effect, and if you're okay with the little drop in resolution and shooting in a 16:9 aspect ratio, definitely might be worth trying out if you want to mount the camera to a moving object. So one of the things that's really cool is that this camera has the ability to do subject tracking, and that basically locks a vertical frame for you to track a subject. So you can see on the screen there's that little gray box, which is what the output will be. It'll basically just track someone in the frame of the 16:9 and put them in a vertical video. So if you're shooting things like reels and you want the camera to track you, it'll do that without having to physically move the camera. And the max resolution for this is 2.7K, but you can go all the way to 60p. So we can see here that there's that little yellow box around me, which is what it's going to track. It just automatically detects the subject after you hit record. So I'm going to hit record right now. And this is what this video looks like. So I can see on the screen that it's tracking me. And it can only obviously track me up to where the camera can see me. So if I walk out of frame here, it should lose me. But if I walk back in, it'll track me again. And it'll basically just put a vertical video. So if I want to film some reels and I want it to film me and I don't have to manage it, this is how you do that. So one more thing I want to try out is the subject tracking while I'm one-wheeling, and we have the Action 5 on a really long stick. So we're going to see how the subject tracking looks with this on. So now we have subject tracking on. We're on the one wheel, if you can see that. And I'm not gonna be framing it any particular way. I'm just gonna make sure that the camera is generally pointed towards me just so that I don't fall out of the frame of the camera, just so that it can still track me. But I'm gonna be moving the camera around a bunch, switching hands all the way behind me, switching hands again, even holding it kind of like the 360 camera style. Moving it around. Let's see if I can switch hands really fast. Swinging it back and forth, left and right. Up. Hello. I can't see the screen right now, so very curious to see how that looks. Is this wide enough to get me? Hopefully. So after looking at that, I want to do one more test where I move the camera a little bit more slowly. Because I think before it did decently track me pretty well, but I think when I'm moving too fast, the camera can't keep up and I kind of go off the frame a little bit. So right now I'm still moving it back and forth. I'm still moving my hand back and forth, but I'm not whipping it as fast. So this is the side shot. Going all the way behind me again, switching hands. Oh. Down low, to the side. Up. Left, right, up. Let's see if this tracking turned out any better. So after all my testing, these are my final thoughts. So would I get this camera as a vlog camera? And right now, I don't think so. So normally I would vlog on my A7S III with a wide angle lens. So having something this small is definitely super nice because it's just easier to carry around. It's not as obtrusive. People don't look at you as much. I don't have to deal with all of that weight. But it is a little hard to get by the quality just because you can't compare it with a action camera with the smaller sensor versus a mirrorless camera. But one thing I do want to try out is the DJI Pocket 3 because that does have a bigger sensor. It's still kind of the same size and weight, it's not like that much different. It does have a gimbal on it so you can get some more stabilized shots. It still has all the DJI connection with the mics. So my friend does have that, so maybe I'll test that out in future videos and then see if I like that as a vlog camera. But for now, for the Action 5 as a vlog camera, I don't think I will get it for that. But then what about as an action camera? And I think that's where obviously this really shines because it is an action camera. So just being able to mount in different places like this, you get some really good quality. The battery life is really good, so even for action shots, you only need to bring like 1, maybe 2 batteries. You don't really have to worry about, oh, maybe if I record now, my battery will die later on and then something will happen and I'll miss it. And you don't have to deal with switching out batteries. It's small enough to fit in a lot of places, so you can mount it in different ways, just like how I have it right here on a little tripod, or mounting it to my one wheel, or putting on a drone. I think the quality looks really good, even with the normal picture profile and the auto settings. So even if you're someone who just wants to use it as an action camera, but don't really have a lot of experience changing like the settings and setting all of that up, just even running in auto looks pretty good. And it will definitely be enough for a lot of people. Of course, running it with the auto settings, you will have to be careful about those darker situations so that you actually set the proper shutter speed, because again, if it gets too dark, then the Action 5 would probably drop your shutter speed too low and then you'll get a lot of motion blur. So just something to be worried about with the auto settings. But I think for someone who wants to buy it as an action camera and then also just use it for some light vlogging in the meantime so that you don't have to spend money on an action camera and then a dedicated vlog camera, I definitely think it's suitable. Especially if you're in the DJI ecosystem, just having the mics connect so that you don't have to worry about syncing audio or doing some weird things with like hooking up the receiver and then a transmitter to the audio is definitely super useful. Again, the battery life is great because then now if you're using this as your vlog camera and your action camera, you can vlog with it. Maybe you're going to a spot to fly some drones, you can vlog with it on the way to the spot, use the same battery while you're flying your drone, and then vlog on the way back, all on one battery. And I think that's just one of the beauties with having a bigger battery. And I know I'm talking a lot about the battery, but I actually think that that's such an important deal because a lot of people just miss out on moments, or they don't take a camera with them because it's too small or it's too much of a hassle. So with the Action 5, it's super small. You can bring it around everywhere. The battery life is great, so you never have the excuse of, oh, I didn't shoot this part because I was afraid of using up all my battery. You can literally just shoot everything with a full charge, with a full battery, and then even if it runs out, just put in another battery or use the quick charge and charge it up.